This conference will now be recorded.
So just before we get started with the workshop, there are a few workshop agreement rules. So the first one is that any feedback you may have about the workshop or this webinar will be shared within our team just to make any improvements for future webinars. Only share what you're comfortable with, so there's no pressure to say anything that you don't feel comfortable in sharing. The workshop should be lasting around between an hour and an hour and a half. If you do need to take a break, I guess feel free to take a break. If you're in a quiet environment with good reception, it will be easier for you to hear me while I speak. And if you have a pen and paper, just in case you need to take any notes or would like to take any notes, just to let everyone know that after this webinar, you will be emailed the presentation slides that we'll be going through right now. And we have also produced a training pack which has different activities relating to these slides in the workshop, which may help you, I guess, understand and practice some of the different skills that we'll be discussing today. And of course, if you do feel like you are struggling and you need to contact anyone for emotional support, the numbers for the Samaritans as well as Sane Line are on this slide. Next slide, please. So I guess just as a warm-up, I just want to ask all of you what you would like to gain from this webinar. So if you could please write inside the chat box function, and my colleague Delia will be reading out your answers.
Okay, we had someone saying, help my mental health during this uncertain and difficult time. We had someone else saying, open-minded, suffer from anxiety, dyspraxia and dyslexia, so this is all helpful. And somebody else said, practical suggestions.
Okay, so that's really, really interesting answers, and hopefully this webinar will really help you with those things. So this webinar is focusing on well-being while you may be unemployed, or whether you're furloughed, or whether you're uncertain about your employment status. So all of these answers that you have given hopefully will be answered throughout this webinar.
Melissa, there's just one more. How to look after myself whilst looking for a job.
Yes, most definitely. So again, it's all well-being focused. So hopefully this webinar would be really, really useful for everyone who has joined today. Next slide, please. So just to start off this workshop, we're first actually going to talk about what a career is. So a career, interestingly enough, isn't just about having paid employment or a paid job. A career is actually much more than that. It is including the paid and unpaid work you've carried out throughout your life, whether that's volunteering, whether that's anything that you've done while at home or while traveling. So it's all the skills and experience that you have developed across your lifetime, any learning that you have undertaken. So that is essentially everything that is involved inside a career. So just asking all of you actually, what, just regards the definition of a career, does anything intrigue you, or does anything stand out to you regards the traditional definition of a career just being paid employment? Again, please write in the chat box below.
Okay, yes, it's nice to hear that it is more than just paid work.
Definitely. So I guess the importance of this definition is just to highlight that again, it is not just paid work. It is all about your different experiences, your skills, and not just to, I guess, diminish the idea of employment or a career to just something where you're paid to work. So sorry, carry on, Delia.
Really sorry. We have a few more comments. It's important as much as personal life. I spend so much time compared to being at home. And then we have another one. I think it needs to include meaning and purpose as I reach my full potential. And one more, routine interacting with others.
Most definitely. And all of these comments are really, really interesting. And interestingly enough, someone actually said to include meaning and purpose. And I actually 100% agree with that. And interestingly enough, this person has actually predicted the next slide. So the next slide is talking about values and talking about meaning and purpose and why that's really important. So as you can see on the slide, we have many, many different values, and values are very different to goals. So firstly, our values are like a compass. They guide us throughout life. They give us meaning and purpose. And the reason why they are different to goals is because goals have an end point, whereas values are often lifelong. And knowing our values actually help us to decide and determine how we would like to be able to deal with different stresses and difficulties in our life. So in spite of how we may feel, we can still move in a direction and in the service of our values. So for example, at the moment, if you may find yourself, well, in relation to employment, if you may find yourself at a time where maybe you're struggling to find work, maybe you've recently lost your job, maybe you've been furloughed, or maybe you're uncertain about your job stability, having your values is really, really important, and following through with your values really, really helps you to actually help deal with those difficult times. And so for example, the value of authenticity is really, really important for some people, of course, not for everyone, but just an example of how values can influence employment. So being authentic to yourself for some people is really, really important. And I actually know someone who whose parents were pushing them to study to be a doctor. And this person really, really didn't want to do that. And they knew that that wouldn't fulfill them or make them happy. And they actually wanted to be a pilot. And they chose, because the value of authenticity was so important to them, they decided to be authentic to themselves and study and train to be a pilot, even though they found it very, very difficult. So that just really highlights how our values can really encourage us and motivate us to reach, I guess, the things that we would really, really love to do. And just thinking about that and just having a look at the different values on the slide here, I guess at first it would be really interesting to hear if there are any values that are really important to you. So please write that in the chat box below. And, just thinking about those, just ask yourself these two questions. Why do you want to be employed? And what career would you like to have? And please feel free to share in the chat box again how your values have influenced your answers to these two questions.
Okay, somebody has said contributing and achievement.
Most definitely, and those are really important values to some people. And I guess just asking yourself, how do you think the values of contributing and achievement are influencing you to want to be employed, or are influencing what kind of career path you would like to take?
Have another one, creativity for self and others.
And again, that's a really, really interesting answer. And just thinking about that, if you could also think about those values and think about how they relate to you wanting to seek employment or wanting to seek a certain career. And again, if you could please write your answers in the chat boxes, because it will be really interesting.
We have another: creativity, challenge, and a sense of progress. Another one: connecting, self-fulfillment and development for self and others. And somebody else: otherwise you feel empty inside.
Most definitely. So thank you so much for sharing that. So the fact that you highlighted that the values of contributing and achievement are important for you, and you know, if you don't follow through or live by those values, that you feel quite empty inside. And again, that's really highlighting how our values are so important, because if they give us that meaning and purpose, and we follow through and live by those, then if we are employed, or even if we are unemployed and we strive towards that direction, then we feel fulfilled and we wouldn't hopefully feel empty inside, because we're still living by those values.
I think that's it.